Joining us now is James Trottier, who is a fellow of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. He's also a former diplomat who served extensively in Asia, including the Canadian Embassy in Seoul. Mr. Trottier, thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
So earlier on, we heard the Prime Minister really talking about the need not only to be friends with South Korea, but also best friends, as he said, given the current geopolitical landscape. When it comes to global security, how important is this visit for Canada, especially when it comes to China?
Well, the visit is very important. It's actually the first visit by a Canadian Prime Minister since in 9 years, which was at the time when the free trade agreement between Canada and Korea was being finalized. And since that time, of course, there have been a lot of developments in the world generally, but in East Asia specifically. And there's also the ongoing challenge in regards to China and the ongoing provocations regarding North Korea.
So important on both sides. In terms of the South Korean viewpoint here, why is it important for Canada, in particular the Canadian Prime Minister, to be visiting Seoul?
Well, I would say the importance comes from what I would call the kind of headline announcement from the visit, which is that South Korea and Canada would cooperate on clean energy economy, critical mineral supplies, and the North Korea threat. Those are the major themes pursued by the Prime Minister in his speech to the National Assembly, in his meeting with President Yoon, in the joint statement after the meeting, in the press conference after the meeting.
And this
for
sorry,
I was going to say for South Korea, Canada remains a critical part of the supply chain in terms of access to critical mineral supplies.
Mm-hmm. And just to connect the dots for people, this is about trying to find a source other than the People's Republic of China for this.
Yes, it's as the Prime Minister says, to find a clean and a secure source. And both the Prime Minister and President Yoon in the past, for instance, in September when President Yoon came to Ottawa, talked about the synergies between the Canadian economy and the South Korean economy, and the Canadian aspirations and South Korean aspirations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, as well, when we look at this, of course, South Korea and Canada has a long-term relationship, which I think many Canadians are not so aware about.
Yes, well, people are aware perhaps more of the Korean War when so many young Canadians went as military and stood with the South Koreans and with other soldiers from other countries in repulsing the North Korean attack. But Canadian ties actually go back a long way to the 19th century. And the Prime Minister actually alluded to that in his comments to the National Assembly today, where he talked about the people who had come out in the 19th century. These were missionaries and medical personnel who actually helped to put in place a lot of the institutions in South Korea today. But also he talked about the people-to-people ties of today, involving students and scientists and visitors. And he also talked about the diaspora of Korean Canadians in Canada, as he said, the fourth biggest group of people of Korean origin in any country in the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did mention the Canada-Korea Free Trade Agreement, and you yourself played a good role in making sure that that was actually adopted by this country. In terms of what's happening right now with this Stellantis battery plant in Windsor, Ontario, LG, a Korean company, is a part of that. Does that kind of send any type of chill to South Korea about Canada as a place for investment?
Well, actually, on the contrary, I think that it points out the importance of the visit at this time. The Prime Minister and the Industry Minister will be attending a state banquet, where the CEO of LG, which is a partner in that plant, LG is a major Korean corporation, the CEO will be at that dinner. And the Industry Minister has said that they plan to speak to the CEO to ensure that he understands the importance of the plant and he understands the importance of LG fulfilling its commitments. So it's an ideal opportunity to do that, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister will have made the same point to the President in their meeting.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, shoring up relations with like-minded Asian countries is certainly part of the government's Indo-Pacific strategy. How does this South Korean trip set up the G7 meeting in Hiroshima, Japan later this week?
Well, I think that there are several themes in the visit to Japan. The Japanese themselves have set up the theme as sort of peace, and they're holding it specifically in Hiroshima. But there are several major themes at the meeting, including geopolitical and global security issues, economic resilience, climate change, and energy. And China actually fits under the first one, that is to say, geopolitical and global security issues. And North Korea fits under that as well, but China also fits under all the rest. And a major geopolitical and global issue that will be discussed at the G7 is, of course, Ukraine. Another one will be security on the Korean Peninsula, and I expect another one will be Taiwan. And for Canada, the clean energy, the clean economy transition was expected, and it turned out to be the case. Was expected to be a major priority for the Prime Minister's visit to South Korea, and it's also expected to be a priority for him at the G7. And what he wants to do in both cases is to link climate change with increased security.
James Trottier, thank you for this. I really appreciate your experience and your insight.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.